Hello, everyone, and welcome to another training. This training is titled Financial Literacy. And here today, we're going to learn about how to manage our money so that we can take care of ourselves and plan ahead. This training is being presented by BIST, the Brain Injury Society of Toronto, and it is funded by the FSRA, the Financial Services Regulatory Authority of Ontario. What is financial literacy? Well, financial literacy is the ability to understand and make smart choices with money. Financial literacy includes several different topics, and the main ones have to do with budgeting, investing, and managing expenses. When we talk about budgeting, we are referring to knowing how much money you have and planning on how to spend your funds. Investing, when we refer to that, is learning how to grow your money over time. And managing expenses looks like keeping track of spending so that you can have money for when you need it later. Why is this important? Why is financial literacy important? Well, for a few reasons. It can help you to avoid poor financial decisions. It can help you maximize your funds with the income you have. And it allows you to plan for the future. So the more we know about our finances, the more we know how to manage our funds, the more we know how to maximize either, investments or things like that, allows us to have less stress and more financial freedom. Learning about finances and becoming financially literate looks at a few things, okay? And it's often talked about in 5 different pillars. So the first, we're going to look at budgeting and money management, ways to do that. We're also going to look at savings and why this is important, why it's good to account for an emergency fund, the just in case scenarios. We look at debt management and credit scores, what this is and where to locate it. We touch upon investing and wealth building. And one of the most important is looking at fraud prevention, okay, part of our financial decision making. Out of the first pillar, we look at budgeting and money management. What is budgeting and how do we manage our money? Well, we can take a look at different budgeting tools, okay? We are now in a technology age. There are a lot of different applications online that you can download or utilize to help you budget and track what you need to spend, things that are needs, things that are wants, taking a look at tracking month to month how much funds we use for groceries, how much we spend on, say, some of their utilities, okay, on communication, telecommunication, like our phone bills or internet bills. There's lots now, and some of us may still want to utilize pen and paper, but we have some options now, okay? So we can take a look at tools that allow us to track it, complete the calculations, give us spending over the year, month to month, and calculate for us whether we've decreased our spending in a particular category or increased. So we have these tools that we can utilize. Some of the budgets help us to control our spending. So they set limits or set alerts when we're coming up to our spending limit. Sometimes some of these tools also send us alert if a purchase has been made. This is particularly useful if we have a shared financial plan with someone else in the family, and we're monitoring each of our use so that we don't go overspending in a particular category, like groceries or maybe clothing budget, right? So we have these tools that allow us to specify what we want, how much we want to use, and then of course if we need to change it for a particular part of the year for a particular need, right? Maybe during the fall, the beginning of fall, we have a slightly larger budget, and as the year runs on, it becomes a smaller budget based on whether you have back to school needs, or say maybe in the holiday months you have a slightly larger budget for spending on gifts, right? These tools allow us to control that and change it as needed. Sometimes we look at a bank account, and it gives us an option to create our budget and set our limits of spending. And this tool then monitors for us. So, you can take a look at different apps. You can even use the ones that are free with your particular financial institution. If you don't like using that, you can go to the paper copy. There are different pages out there that you can access. You can create your own, but ones that allow us to place the actual needs within our budget, whether it's rent or mortgage, utility bills, grocery bills, maybe it's car insurance or fuel. Okay, and it allows us to list the things we want. And we can compare those notes. We can tally up at the end of the month how much we utilized, if we went over budget in one, to be able to make a plan for the next month in our spending. Some folks have used a spending journal where they then compare those rates. So you can use paper and pen in this process, or you can use an application. Some people use spending jars, right? Placing in cash a visible handheld amount so that they have a visual representation of their money. Some people find that a strategy in order to help them save or to decrease in certain spending. That allows you to visually see what you have left. So there's different ways you can do that, okay? Here is a budget example in paper format that has category lists, and you would put down what you want to budget, what you actually spend, and what the difference was. Did you go over? Did you stay under? Okay. A lot of times there are tips that come in a different rule to follow. Okay. So the ideal would be that in the income, say for a month, that 50% of your income would be spent on things like rent, food, bills. That 30% would be spent on wants, so hobbies, entertainment, and 20% would be set aside for savings or paying off debt. So this is a tip to try to follow. Some of us may struggle with that if our, say, rent is way higher than what our income is, right? So we might, a lot of individuals in Canada have very, very high rent or mortgage payments. And we might not be able to follow this rule completely. We could adjust these percentages to more accurately reflect what we have, right? But this is a general rule and guideline to try to follow in order to become financially secure. One of the other pillars we talked about was saving in emergency funds. And we look at different tips. We want to be able to put money aside. And it's that phrase, let's say for a rainy day. Our rainy day might be for an emergency fund, right? Where we want to put away or aside enough money to cover a couple months in case something happens, if it's a loss in income or job, whether it's injury, things like that, okay? Sometimes our saving goals are for education, and sometimes it's for something like a vacation or travel, whether it's for a need or a want, right? We can start small. Sometimes we don't have a lot of wiggle room with our income that allows us to have money to set aside in large quantities, but maybe we can set it aside in very small quantities. Even if it's starting with $5 a week, that can grow over time. And we can use the different applications. We can use paper, where we jot down an end goal, and every time we add the money, we recalculate how much of our goal we've reached. Oftentimes historically, we've used the thermometer to show. A lot of fundraising goals use the thermometer to show how far up we've saved. And sometimes people need a visual reminder where they physically put coins or cash away in order to stay motivated. Okay. For some folks, saving comes in a different form. If income isn't necessarily that large, maybe you are on social assistance and you have access to, Ontario Disability Support Program, or maybe you have applied and have access to disability tax credit. There's other ways that we can look at savings. So for folks who are on ODSP, what the government has set up is something called the Registered Disability Savings Plan. And this allows folks to put aside money that is not considered an asset to be able to save for a rainy day. So if you are someone that is who has access to and is approved for ODSP, this is something that you can use. Okay, so look into it. Look into applying for the Registered Disability Savings Plans. If you are of a certain age, you can receive federal grants in the forms of bonds. Okay, that you can accumulate. Of course, there are some limitations, so it's best to check that out. For some folks, opening up a tax-free savings account, a TSFA, is an option. And I would highly recommend folks looking into that because it is, like it says in the title, tax-free, and you're able to put money in that fund up to a certain quantity that isn't tax deducted, okay? So these are other ways that you can save money by putting it aside in a type of fund or plan. Another one of the pillars is debt management and understanding your credit score. Debt management tips come in many different forms. One of the tips that's often looked at is when we owe money, whether it be a loan or a credit card, that we try to pay off the debt with the highest interest rate. Okay, so this applies to things like credit cards or loans, whether it be payday or student. If it has the higher interest rate, we want to try to pay off or pay down that first. Okay. We want to make sure we make at least the minimum payment on time to protect our credit score. And if we can, try to pay it down as fast as we can, right? Making those regular payments ensuring that we're putting aside money and not increasing our debt. We want to limit our credit card use and avoid maxing out the balances, because this does affect our credit score. Sometimes it's necessary. Sometimes there's a large purchase we have to make, and we know that and we've planned for it. Sometimes it's an emergency, and that's what these credit cards are usually used for. You know, maybe it is that trip and you have to put it on a credit card because that's how you purchase the airline ticket, because they don't accept cash, right? But we want to make sure we pay it off. Another tip is to check your credit score regularly and make sure that there is no, changes that you're not aware of, okay? Sometimes really high fluctuating credit scores mean that something's wrong, mean that someone's either accessing your accounts or changing information, okay? So check in with that, check your credit score, and make sure that you speak to someone, a financial advisor, or someone at your banking institution to discuss this and make a plan. If you're someone who forgets to make payments, look into the option of setting up automated payments to make sure that you make bill payments for credit cards, for, some of your utilities timely and not miss the payment date, which sometimes incurs charges or interest. If you find it difficult to manage debt, if you find it difficult to make payments on time, maybe you forget, right? Maybe it's hard to keep track. There are places that you can go for help. Okay. Sometimes if we have a lot of debt and it's hard to manage and we find ourselves getting into trouble with making payments, we can talk to credit counselors. They're folks that are designated and designed to help us plan, help us take a look at our finances, help us with debt management. Okay. There are different terms for this. There is debt consolidation, where they help us to make one payment instead of several. There's something that can be offered called a consumer proposal, where they speak on your behalf to the banks, okay, and help to end the percentage payback and help you work down on the lumps, on the actual sum, okay, without the interest building. In some cases where folks are not able to make payments because of change of finances, some folks have to look at declaring bankruptcy. So these are very serious, different ways to manage debt, but it's good to know about them and be able to be aware of them. Talking to someone who is a financial advisor, someone who does manage debt or help with credit counseling, can be something that you can look into if you need it. I will go back to this for a second, the debt management. There are also nonprofits that look at helping you pay your bills. They don't take over your accounts. It isn't something where you don't have control. You have control. And you allow them to help you with the reminders and help you make the payments so that you don't forget and run into trouble with outstandings, okay? It's a voluntary thing. You can cancel it at any time, but it's worth it to look into your area to find out what nonprofits are offering the support with financial management. Investing in wealth building. So for those who have the funds and are able to put aside money, even if you don't at the time, it's a good idea to look into and learn about different investing options and ways that you can build your wealth. The way to do this is to talk to someone who's certified in this particular field. So financial experts, okay? The FSRA, the Financial Regulatory Authority, does monitor folks, and there are specific certifications that financial advisors, experts can look at and obtain in order for you to know whether they're certified to talk to you about these matters. You know, you have to be aware that we shouldn't just go to anyone to invest money for us. They should be someone who are trained, who understand investments and wealth management. Folks may want to look at starting with a small amount, right? And look at the different growth options. Is it something that has, you know, low risk, medium risk, or high risk? And what that means to you over time. Some folks can look at whether or not their job or place has or offers a retirement plan or a pension plan. Some places offer a mutual fund contribution if they do make use of it. This is a way for you to build money and wealth. What we also have to be aware of in any component or activity with money or accounts, especially online, is fraud that can occur, and being able to prevent fraud and make financial decisions that are safe. So for those, we talked about it a little bit briefly. We can look at trusteeship or financial literacy assistance. Okay. These places are called community voluntary trusteeships. There are different ones around the province and in all different cities that can be utilized. They help to make you, allow you to pay your bills on time. If someone isn't able to, maybe they don't or can't remember. Maybe they don't have capacity. One of the last resorts that is available to folks is the Office of the Public Guardian and Trustee. And this is housed under the Ministry of the Attorney General. This allows someone else within the government agency to take over our finances. This is usually used as a last resort, but people should be aware that that's available to them. When we talk about trusteeship and financial literacy assistance, there are different ones that operate, and they change over time. You can access through 211 and ask for the different trusteeships in the area. Tips on scams and fraud. Educate yourself on common scams. Maybe there's articles in the paper and our news outlets that talk about different ones that are occurring. Know if it's, folks are coming door to door or folks are calling you. Take a look at what those could be. Before you ever send money somewhere, check the source. We shouldn't be sending money if someone's asked for it. It should be something that we independently decided. So, for example, if I wanted to make a donation to a charity, it's okay that someone reaches out and says, would you like to make a donation? I can say, yeah, I'll think about it. And then I can go to their website or call them up independently and say, I would like to make a contribution. This allows me to control whether the link or the person I'm talking to is real and not a scam. What we also want to do is ensure we have security safety features on our banking applications. We are in a technology and digital age, and we want to make sure that we protect ourselves as best we can. The financial institutions, especially in the province and in Canada, have indicated that if we don't do our due diligence to have secure passcodes and to keep our information as secure as possible, we might be held accountable if we are scammed. Okay. If we've done our best to ensure that our passwords are kept safe and secure, then if we happen to fall prey to a scam, then they can help us out. If we're unsure about something, about our finances, about saving, about our credit, about paying bills, we should seek professional advice. We should talk to someone who knows how to do this. We should also get a second opinion if we're not sure. It's available to us. So let's utilize it. If there are any questions, this presentation was for BIS, the Brain Injury Society of Toronto. You can call their warm line and ask them to direct you or help you look up resources in the area. These are some of the resources and links to the toolkits shown in this particular training. Over time, these might change. So take a moment in your internet browser and look up different tools, budgets, or different information on the Canada Revenue site or in your area about different ways, applications, or links or resources to save. Thank you for your time.